Lindsay asked me to come and talk today a little bit about the history of Workplace Education Manitoba, the philosophy and major frameworks by which we operate, and some of the strategies that we employ that keep Workplace Education Manitoba sort of sitting at the top of the heap in Canada in terms of workplace literacy and essential skills. So that's what I'll try to achieve in a fairly short period of time today. Workplace Education Manitoba was founded in 1991. It was the provincial government that actually decided to move forward with the idea of this steering committee. It is a legally incorporated not-for-profit group. It has a board, which is what we call a tripartite board. It's comprised of Manitoba Federation of Labour nominated representatives, business community representatives, and one government representative, which is myself. I am called an ex officio and strategic advisor, which means that I have no voting power, which leaves union members and business members with the legal authority over the board. They created Workplace Education Manitoba because they clearly recognized that there was a strong need in the business community to have this type of programming in terms of getting existing employees in particular ready to do the work that employers needed them to do. And don't forget, at the time, it was 1991, and while some of you are clearly too young to remember, I do remember. And at the time, there was all this stuff happening, like the computer chip. So there was computers entering the workplace. None of us had personal computers really at that time. That was to come within a few years. We certainly didn't have things like personal cell phones and Blackberries. They didn't exist. So the introduction of computer into the workplace in terms of things that were sitting on people's desks that were sort of fancy word processors was just coming on. And at that time also was total quality management and the beginning of the whole lean philosophy. That was sort of coming on at that time. And the idea that instead of minding your business and never minding what the guy before you and after you was doing, you should now think of yourself as part of a team. And it is now your business to understand how things work and where you're getting your work from and where the work is going to. And these were major, major shifts in thinking. Now it's just basically what happens, but at the time this was all like, whoa. So for existing employees, it was a massive shift, and the government saw that the introduction of workplace literacy would be of great use to them. I should mention also with total quality management, suddenly the big thing at the time was statistical process control. And in other words, we're going to understand what we're doing by measuring it, and then we're going to study the measures, and we're going to interject with things that we feel are drivers or things that will change those measures in a positive direction. So we want to introduce the intervention, and then we want to study it again with statistics. And it became incumbent on the people on the floor as the teams to take those statistics and go, working, not working, what else could we do? Okay? And people had not had to deal with this kind of information ever before. I mean, it was just like, what is all this stuff? Nor the idea that they're sitting in teams with people and running meetings and taking notes and, you know, resolving conflict. They had not had to do anything like that before. So the other piece of this was that the provincial government didn't have enough money to come to the level of response that they felt was needed. After all, this would be a new program area for them. But the federal government did, and there was no way to get at the federal government money except through third party. The federal government would not and still will not transfer money to another government. So the way to do it was with these third parties. So thus Workplace Education Manitoba was born. It immediately distinguished itself because of this business-labor partnership. And at the time also, that was government money. They wanted to see somehow that you were including labor at the table. So that was kind of the idea behind why they initiated Workplace Education Manitoba in this way. But in order for a business and union partnership to be able to go forward, it had to be founded on principles of respect and safety for people in the workplace and trust. So it was respect for business principles from the union side. It was a respect for union principles from the business side, which included typical things that you would see in collective agreements, things like seniority and protection of individuals and not sharing private information such as assessment with the employer if Workplace Education Manitoba was to have some money on the table. So those guiding principles, if you will, formed how we did our work. You couldn't go into a workplace without, in a unionized environment, without Manitoba Federation of Labor's agreement, which is why we say to you, are they unionized? Because we then go to the Federation of Labor representatives and say, we're going into this workplace, is that okay with you? This is what we expect to happen in the workplace. Sometimes they'll phone ahead to the union representatives and ask for their assistance. Sometimes they'll just say, no, it's fine. I can think of one occasion in over 20 years where they've asked us not to proceed. One occasion only, because people were out on strike. They didn't want us to cross the picket line, etc. And we respect that request. Workplace Education Manitoba since 1991 has achieved considerable success, not only in the province of Manitoba, but it's recognized across Canada and also in other countries, Mexico, England, Scotland, Australia, and the United States, to name a few. So the manner in which we work, the success that we have had with employers and with existing workers has been greatly applauded and recognized. In part, it comes from those operating principles, these set of principles around how we deal with partnerships and how we go in and start the work. It also has to do with the philosophies on which we base our work and on which we build things. The first one is that it's all about the workplace, and every workplace is different. So we have always gone in with an idea that we need to customize to this workplace's need. And over the years, it's gone from a very simple and rudimentary understanding of what that is to quite a sophisticated understanding of what that is in 2013. And we've done considerable work around always improving what we do. We're total quality management ourselves. We're always looking at how well did we do? How could we improve this? What are the business trends? But early on we discovered the workplace is a system. And to regard our training or anything else that we're doing in isolation from other parts of that workplace is a sure recipe for disaster in many cases. So we early on developed the idea that you have to look at other things that are going on in the workplace at the same time, not just this little essential skills training piece that we're doing. So in the needs assessment work that we began to do, we began to look at other things in the system that could impinge on our success or that we need to factor in. So we approach things with a systems view. And it borrows, if you will, on some of the total quality management principles that workplaces themselves use that are into this. Things like the Ishikawa fishbone diagram of cause and effect. Is it the system? Is it the process? Is it the human resource base? Is it lack of supports? Is it equipment? You know, we've borrowed on those simple things to say, this is not a competency or training issue. The problem is the machines keep breaking down, but you're not fixing them, if you will. And there are occasions on which we have said, no, we are not delivering this training. It is not a question of skill. It is something else in the system. At the same time, you know, those annoying little project approval forms that I have you fill out, it's intended to look at the risks and barriers. What other things in this workplace could affect our ability to have success? Often it's production schedules. It could be quality audits themselves. It could be changes in personnel. It could be impending process change that none of the staff know about. There's all manner of other kinds of things that can affect it. So looking at the workplace as a system is part of the way that we approach our work. The other thing that we've done is we use a methodology, whether you're aware of it or not. Your project approval requests force you through this methodology called Instructional Systems Design, or ISD, which you will find a lot online about that in the United States. But if you will, it's project management for training. And it forces you through a needs analysis of all stakeholder needs, okay? Through the needs assessment part, the analysis part. It forces you through that thinking about systems and cause and effect. It puts you into a design phase where you're saying, look, I think this is the proposed solution. You validate that with stakeholders. You go out, you develop the solution, pilot it, if you have the luxury of a pilot period. Put it on the ground, and then you evaluate it. And evaluation, very simply, is the collection of information for which or upon which a future judgment will be made. Okay? And evaluation, I'm really, really big on evaluation, because right away in the needs assessment phase, you should be coming out of that with the success indicators on which you would evaluate any program. So it's called preemptive evaluation. Before you even start, you know what you'll be evaluating. And you should have a good idea about that and begin to collect information right away as you're going along. Okay? There should never be this, as we finish it, oh, how should we tell if it's right? You know, never. That doesn't happen in the way that we work. For the evaluation methodology, brings us to another philosophy that we use, which is Kirkpatrick, Donald Kirkpatrick, and now his son. I can't recall his name in the moment. But the 4 levels of evaluation, very simply, the first one is the smiley sheets. Is everyone happy in the classroom? Okay? And that's all very nice, but if it's not getting any learning and it's not producing a change in the workplace, fundamentally, it doesn't matter how happy they are. We have not done our job correctly, because we are about the workplace. The second level of Kirkpatrick, and there's all manner of stuff online about this, plus instructional systems design. The second level of Kirkpatrick is learning change. Did they actually learn something? Of course, we're keen to know that. The third level is a behavioral change or transfer to the workplace. Did the performance change? Did they start to do something new? Or as Lindsay said many years ago, did they stop doing something they were doing? Which can be just as valuable, right? And the fourth level of change is what in the classic literature they would call a return on investment. We did some work on another project about 3 years ago, and there was an initial research in terms of this concept of investment, and we came out, we being the researchers at the time, with the concept of return on expectation, or ROE, which suits us better, because return on investment often involves accountant level calculations that we are not able to make, okay? We only do it on very heavily invested in sophisticated research projects, typically the federal government is funding. But we can do something called return on expectation, going back to the stakeholders' original expectation about what value this would add, and going back in not only throughout what we're doing, but also post-intervention to see, did we actually meet their expectation? And if not, why not? Sometimes there's a good reason why the expectation isn't met. Things change. The expectation was unreasonable to begin with, which brings up another point of always having to manage stakeholder expectation. I mean, I've literally in my own consulting and teaching career, because I did what you do for a number of years before I now do what I do. And, you know, we would go into a workplace and they would expect that English as another language learners, for example, would have their language issues dealt with in 15 hours. That's an expectation you really need to manage through education, right, of stakeholder groups. I mean, that's just way crazy. But often they have expectations like that because they just don't understand, and that becomes part of our job on the front end, if you will. So return on expectations and the whole Kirkpatrick evaluation methodology is something that we use. It, even in the year 2013, earmarks us significantly for many others who rely on that level 1 or smiley sheet stuff to this, even in this day and age. But we don't do that, and that makes us a little bit different. The final piece of the philosophy is essential skills itself. And we hold hard to the HRSDC 9 essential skills. There's a reason for that. It is about the tasks or the performance in the workplace, and that's what we have always been about. The other piece is that it was originally derived by surveying employers and employees in Canada, over 900 of them, to find out what they do in their jobs, and creating all of these profiles online through sort of a rigorous profiling methodology that was standardized across the country. It borrows on Statistics Canada and OECD work, which is levels 1 to 5. So it borrows on the concept of what complexity level are you required to apply this skill in this task. All of those descriptors made enormous sense to employers. And trust me, I was around before essential skills. And we would spend 2 years trying to get an employer to understand what is workplace literacy. But you just show them the list of 9 and they go, yeah, we want that. It's instantaneous. It's their language. It's their way of thinking. It's about things that go on in the workplace. And for that reason, it is a very helpful tool. Is it perfect? No, I get that. But we can augment with things like employability skills. However, it is good enough to get that hook with employers, which is a very difficult thing to do. It is good enough to encapsulate the philosophy of it's about these foundational skills in the workplace. It is good enough in terms of the idea that it relies on tasks and complexity levels for us to be able to get results for those expectations. And it is a standardized thing that I can put out there from government head to say, no, it's not grade 12 math. It's this math for this task, for this occupation or process in the workplace, okay? And it's been very, very useful in that regard, in getting that kind of standardization. Not to mention in creating an enormously successful partnership with the federal government since 1991. And that yields us a lot of money in order to do particularly innovative work, okay? So in the year 2013, the provincial government largely funds the delivery, and the federal government funds the playground. That's what I call it. It's the ability to pilot ideas. You know, so in terms of our strategy and how we move forward, it's about innovation for us all the time. We never, ever rest on our laurels. And when I begin to get the feeling, oh, we haven't been doing a proper environmental landscape about how is the workplace changing? What are the new trends? What are the new trends in training and education for adults? Is there anything new on the essential skills horizon? When I start to feel a bit stale around that, it makes me very nervous. And so we always keep on the cutting edge And that's a lot of the work, for example, that Lindsay does for us in terms of researching that and finding out how are people talking about this stuff, what's going on, what's Australia doing? I love to keep my eyes on Australia. What's the US up to? What are the British Isles up to? You know, all that kind of stuff feeds in. Hey, look at this, you know. For example, the British a few years ago spent $15 billion on workplace literacy, if you will. And out of that came a very significant piece of research and tool development on the idea of self-confidence, and how when people gain self-confidence, it has this impact. And we were able to move that concept forward from the work that the Brits did into some of the work that Workplace Education Manitoba was doing. Okay, so that's the kind of thing that we do. I also listen very carefully to you people who are out in the field and what you're saying to me in terms of what employers are saying, but also in terms of where we are with our different demographic pools. Okay, so I've to this moment in time been very hard line. It's about the workplace, it's about the workplace, it's about the workplace. But at the same time, in terms of our strategies, we're enormously learner-centered also. Okay, that's our big secret. We are also learner-centered, which means when you dip into various demographic pools, be those described as immigrant, refugee, Aboriginal, geographically dispersed, rural locations or northern remote locations, those on welfare and employment income assistance transferring to the workplace, women, older workers, disabled workers, okay? So fundamentally, the recipe is workplace need minus individual skill level and employability and suitability level equals the gap training that we do, or the training response, if you will. And with a collection of individuals, it's about not only their pooled need, which is a common core in the classroom for multi-level, multi-learner, but also individual need. What does this person need? So we always work in that mix. Again, customizing to need, not only the workplace, but mix that with the demographic characteristics and or the individual skill level, and that equals our strategy for going forward. We also like to share the work that we do. We have always offered things with an open hand. So work that we do, other provinces want it, we give it to them. Other people in the city want it, we give it to them openly. We are funded by government to deliver solutions, be it federal or provincial. It is for the public good. And therefore, nothing that we own has ever remained ours and ours alone. We share with an open hand. For that, our ability to fund the things that we need to do grows and grows and grows. And I believe it's as a result of that open mind, open heart, and our ability to partner. I'd like to finalize by what I'm saying this morning by saying the other piece of the mix is our capacity, and that's why you're here today. It's our capacity to be able to do all of this. And we have always shouldered the capacity building in the province for essential skills and workplace literacy. We've done that consistently since 1991. We offer this also with an open hand to the community at large, be it secondary instructors, school principals, college instructors, college administrators, other third-party not-for-profit involved in pre-employment, as well as all of the workplace people, including human resource people, technical trainers, quality people, anybody. We build their capacity. If they have a need, we will support them, not to mention many other government departments. In the last 5 years in particular, our expertise about what people need to be successful in the workplace has transferred into pre-employment worlds. Okay, so Workplace Education Manitoba now has responsibility in the north, as of the last 4 years, for assisting people get jobs aligned with workplace employers in the North and work opportunities. We deal with mining, forestry, hydro, construction, and healthcare. Those are the big ones, and the service sector in the North. And we help to make sure that the right training is delivered as people are on an employment plan pathway towards one of those major employers in the North. Because of that success, and we were ridiculously successful at it, in a region where typically people are not successful at this kind of training, that success is now seen as valued for the new government mandate of helping employment income assistants who are ready to be on a work path get there quicker. So all of that work that WEM has done is now transferring into these arenas. And it's all about exactly the mix that I've talked about here this morning. It's the same thing in the year 2013 as it was in 1991. And so thank you for coming today, and I wish you well in your capacity building and your learning this morning.